Good morning. Welcome to A Scribe Scribbles. Today's episode, we're going to talk about why you should be writing for a single person and why that single person should be a woman. So stick around. We can talk about that. All right. As a writer, there comes a point when you lose focus in your story or you start to focus on the wrong aspects. As a result, your words begin to falter, the story itself falls flat, and it stops being what you wanted it to be. Your story will take a form that you really don't recognize. And it happens to all of us once in a while, and we lose that spark or that drive, and we lose interest in the story, even though we know that this story is a great story and is one that needs to be told. We lose that sense of excitement that we once had when we first started the idea of this story. So how do we get back to that magic? How do we return our creative story back to that exciting tale that we once believed it was going to be? The simple answer is we talk about it. We love to talk about our stories as writers. Anybody that'll listen, let me tell you what I'm working on. Let me tell you about this new idea I had. We love to talk about it, and the more we talk about it, the more excited we become. And it becomes a fun adventure for us as a writer to be able to explain to somebody without actually handing them the book, to say, hey, here is what I'm doing. And that excitement is part of the draw of being an artist, of being a writer. So when we talk about our book, if we're stuck on this one spot in the story, or something in the character arc or the story arc is falling flat, if we were to go out and pick up a friend or a relative and start telling them about the story, we would momentarily become excited again. Now, by the time we got home or got off the phone, got back to writing, we would be excited for a while, and then you would start to write, and you would notice that you would fall right back into that blah stage, and the overall excitement wouldn't last long. Telling somebody that we know about our story only returns that want to write, but it does nothing for the story itself. So if we want to improve our story, we want to get our writing and our story back to the levels that it was when we first started, as well as being able to write with that allure that attracts the readers. We have to tell our story to one person. We don't tell it to our target audience. We don't pick out a group of people to tell the story to. We tell our story to one person. And I'm going to give you an exercise. And this exercise can be done at any time. And I recommend that you do it any time that you begin to feel that your story is stuck or stagnant or falling apart. And it only requires your imagination. However, you have to be able to pretend. And what you are pretending is that you are sitting at a table or on a couch or in a recliner, but you're somewhere quiet. And you have your finished book in your hands. And you're sitting across from someone you will read your story to. So you're going to imagine that you're opening up your book and you start on page 1 and you just start reading your story to this person. Now, before you get your hackles in a raise, the person that you should be talking to is not somebody you know. It should be an imaginary person, a made-up person. And the person should be a woman. And I don't care what genre that you're writing in. I don't care if you yourself are male or female. But the person that you're about to read your story to, this imaginary person, should be a woman. Because women buy more books than men. Women read more books than men. And on average, when you speak to a woman, regardless of what gender you are, you tend to be more expressive, you're more thorough, you're more excited or emotional, and these are the aspects that your story is lacking. That's why it's stuck, that's why it's stagnant, that's why it's falling apart, because you're missing that emotion. So when you sit there in your imaginary chair with your imaginary female friend, and you open your book, and you start reading it out loud to her, really read it out loud. If you have to close your eyes to imagine the scene, then do it. If you can do it with your eyes open, then do it. But you have to imagine that you're speaking to a woman that you don't know, and you read your story. And you're going to begin to adjust your story to fit your target audience. And you'll notice this. You'll notice as you're telling your story, especially when you get to the parts that are sticking points for you, or parts that you might have skipped over. When you begin to adjust your story for this audience, you realize that it is an audience of one, and this becomes a lot simpler. And as you tell your story, you will notice that the parts that sucked, or that just didn't have that certain something that we wanted our story to have, those areas begin to regain that spark. And when you're done, when you've read your story, or you've read through the part that you're stuck on at a minimum, I recommend you try to get through most of the story as you can. But if you can only get to the part that is a sticking point for you, then that's fine. But as you get to that part, as you get finished, you're going to notice that the creative juices are flowing, and you will be better prepared to get back into your writing. And so when you finally do get back to your desk, get back to opening up your novel and you're working on it, they will stick around because you know where the story needs to go. You know what this aspect that was missing now needs to contain, and you can put it there and make it complete. And when you see it come together, that builds on the excitement that you already had. And it's a great exercise to get through these tough little plot points or character draws that may otherwise have stayed flat or been non-existent. And if you can do it constantly throughout the writing process of this novel, you'll notice that your novel will contain more of that raw emotion and more of that spark of energy that will not only attract the readers, but will keep them through each page turn, which is one of the drawing aspects of writers. And what we truly crave is for you to not be able to put that book down until you're on the last page. So if you have these aspects where you are stuck, if you have this part of your story that you're writing on and you're stuck in it and you don't know what else to do, try this exercise out and sit down and tell your story to this imaginary woman out loud, and get through those points and get that creative flow back, and then get back to your writing. I know we're keeping it short this week. It's a simple exercise. I want you to practice it. Tomorrow we will have the newsletter come out. It will go into a little more depth of why we're going to do this exercise with a woman as the imaginary person on the other side of the table. There are some physiological, psychological, and emotional aspects to it, and we will cover that in the newsletter, as well as give you a slight homework assignment to prepare you for next week. So until then, you guys get back to work, have fun, and write words.